Hello all you music lovers, and welcome to the third episode of my record collection. This is part 2 for the letter B. So let's get right started. Blind Faith. Now this was a supergroup that was formed in the late 60s by a former member of Traffic and a couple of guys from Cream. You might have heard of them. They are Eric Clapton, Steve Winwood, Ginger Baker, and Rick Gregg. Now, the album tracks are in here are pretty great. Let me put it over here. It's a little bit better that way. And the songs Had to Cry Today, Can't Find My Way Home is a fantastic song. I love that song. And Presence of the Lord. Eric Clapton will revisit that song quite a bit on live albums. And Sea of Joy, and it ends with a Ginger Baker drum solo. And it goes on for about 11 minutes, but it's fascinating to hear. Next album we have here is Blink-182, Dude Ranch. This is this is my favorite Blink-182. This is fantastic. Let me try to get it out of the light. Let's go like that. Blink-182. Here's the inside of it. It's like a little visitors thing. And the album is an orange album. That's pretty neat. And the album tracks, the tracks on this album are fantastic. Let's go with Pathetic and Damn It. Boring. Waggy. Untitled. Untitled is fantastic. Apple Shampoo. These are odd titles, but believe me, the songs aren't that odd. It's the titles, but the songs are fantastic. It's pure pop punk. It really is. And Josie. That's a good song too. Next we have here Blood, Sweat and Tears. This is the second album, Blood, Sweat and Tears Part 2. The tracks on this one are More and More, God Bless the Children, Spinning Wheel, and You've Made Me So Very Happy. That's my favorite Blood, Sweat and Tears songs, is You've Made Me So Very Happy. There's the inside of it. And if you're new to our channel, I am going through my records, and I will mention song tracks that stick out to me, and tracks that I like that you may not have heard of, and then maybe you can go back and hear them for yourselves. Blood, Sweat and Tears, the third one. This is a really good album as well. If you never heard of Blood, Sweat and Tears, just think of a little bit like Chicago, just a little bit heavier sometimes. There's the inside of it. This one has a cover of Fire and Rain, which is done by James Taylor, which I really like James Taylor version. This one's a little different. And Symphony for the Devil. It's also a Sympathy for the Devil from the Stones, and they turn it around and they rearrange it. They put horns and they put their own Blood, Sweat and Tears twist to it. And this one doesn't have a number. It's just called No Sweats by Blood, Sweat and Tears. That's sometimes this comes out on YouTube as one of the weirdest album covers, and then when you open it up, it gets weirder. There's not any album. There's no songs that really jump out to me. But this was the first Blood, Sweat and Tears album I ever bought. So it's okay to listen to because it led me to buy others. And what I have here is two superstars of sort getting together, and that would be Mike Bloomfield and Al Kooper got together. Now, Mike Bloomfield and Al Kooper started off with Blood, Sweat and Tears, but he did so much work behind the boards and playing guests, being a guest instrumentalist in so many different bands and songs that I know that we've heard of. And Mike Bloomfield was a fantastic guitar player, and he made his chops known on with Bob Dylan on Highway 61 Revisited. There's the inside of it. with liner notes, a lot of liner notes, and also big liner notes on here. This was released in 1968, and it says here also featuring Elvin Bishop and Carlos Santana. So, you know, that's a little tidbit there. And also what I have next is Bloomfield, Cooper, and Stills. These are the super sessions that were done with the two gentlemen that I had mentioned earlier, along with Stephen Stills. Of course, Stephen Stills at this time was when Buffalo Springfield was in turmoil, and I will talk about them shortly. I haven't heard this that many times to really say, oh, you gotta hear this album, you gotta hear that song, but it was an interesting listen. Next, we have a guitar player who filled shoes for two different big-time guitarists. First of all, he took over for Joe Walsh when Joe Walsh left the James Gang, and then he took over for the what's his name? And then he took over for Deep Purple. And I'm talking about Tommy Bolin on Teaser. And this album was okay. I heard it last night. I was expecting more of a guitar heroics, and it really isn't. It's more of it's just a smooth pop guitar album, but I was expecting a little bit more from it. Richie Blackmore, I can't believe I forgot, but he took over for Richie Blackmore when Richie Blackmore left Deep Purple to form Rainbow. Now, this next album here, these guys came out of New York, and they were pretty heavy for the time. I'm talking about Blue Oyster Cult. This is a really heavy album. This was released in 1973, and this was kind of even it was ahead of its time. You can even hear the drudgery, the gothness of it in this album, and the whole thing is great. But let's start off with the Red and the Black, OD'd on Life Itself, Seven Screaming Disc Busters, Wings Wetted Down, and Mistress of the Sound and Salt. Those are some really good tracks on this album. If you're not that familiar with Blue Oyster Cult, just a couple of hits they came out with, I would say to go ahead and look them up and stream it. I think you'll find it pretty enjoying, especially if you like your rock a little bit harder, but not too extreme, just a harder rock edge to it. And next, I don't have too many Blue Oyster Cults. I do need to get more. I really do. But this one I have. Blue Oyster Cult, Agent of Fortune. This has one of their biggest hits called Don't Fear the Reaper. But I heard this recently, and it's got some really good tracks on here. And they kind of get away from the gothness and the heavy drudgery that was on the... which one was this called anyway? Tyranny and Mutations. This one is more melodic rock. They still kind of have a heavier guitar solos, but the rhythm is a little bit lighter than what we were used to. And that wasn't a bad thing, because they did it very well. Next we have Bon Jovi, 7800 Fahrenheit. I know that sometimes people bat their eyes or roll their eyes about Bon Jovi, but I am a Bon Jovi fan. I've been a Bon Jovi fan since I was a kid. Well, not their music now. Now I can't really stomach them that much. But back in the day, in the 80s and early 90s, they were a really good rock band. The tracks on here, In and Out of Love, Silent Night, and Tokyo Road were the hit songs on this one. And what's next is Bon Jovi, Slippery When Wet. This is a personal favorite of mine. This will always be one of my favorite albums. This was the first concert that I ever went to, was Bon Jovi, the Slippery When Wet tour. Cinderella opened up for them for their Night Songs tour. And my uncle, Aunt Duda, and Aunt Nora took me for my very first concert. And the songs on here, top notch, beginning to end. Let It Rock, You Give Love a Bad Name, Living on a Prayer, Social Disease, and Wanted Dead or Alive. That's side one. I'm going to read the whole thing because every song on here needs to be heard. Raise Your Hands, Without Love, I Die For You, Never Say Goodbye, and Wild in the Streets. Let me put it over here. Wild in the Streets and Never Say Goodbye is a really good ballad. Well, not a ballad, but like a rock ballad. Yeah. And what's next here is Booker T and the MGs, Macklemore Avenue. As you can tell, they're crossing the street a la Abbey Road by the Beatles, and there's a reason for that, because all the songs that they do here are off the Abbey Road album by the Beatles. Now, this is called Macklemore Avenue because this is located in Memphis, Tennessee, and my wife and I took a tour of the Stax recording studio, and Stax recording studio is located right there on Macklemore Avenue, and those are the guys walking across the street. And Stax was I wouldn't say rivaled Motown in the 60s and 70s, but they were a harder edge, and Booker T and the MGs were pretty much the house band for all the music that came out of there. And the songs that they do on here is, like I said, off of Abbey Road. They do Golden Slumbers. They do Here Comes the Sun, Carry That Weight, The End, and Something. And when they do these, they do it as one piece of music, just cascading into each other. That was just one side, and they all go together. And the second side has it's a medley, just like the first one, but it has Because, and You Never Give Me Your Money, Sun King, Mean Mr. Mustard, Policing Pam, and She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, and I Want You, She's So Heavy. This was a really good listen. Especially, I'm a big Beatle fan, and I enjoy Abbey Road. And when I hear other people do it to give respect or homage to Abbey Road, I pick it up, and I'm never disappointed. Now, what I have next is a album that everybody has probably heard, even if you don't own it. If you heard classic rock radio or any kind of rock radio, every song on this album was basically played on the radio, and there's nothing wrong with that. If they're all played on the radio for a reason, it's because it's good. Talk about Boston, their debut album. And when I read you these songs, you're going to say, oh yeah, you're right, they do play those on the radio. The whole album is played on the radio. Even Thriller by Michael Jackson can say that. This has More Than a Feeling, Peace of Mind, and Foreplay, Long Time. Side 2, Rock and Roll Band, Smoking, and I Ain't Joking. Hitch a Ride, Something About You, and Let Me Take You Home Tonight. Every song was played on the radio. This is so good to listen to. And their second album is Boston. This wasn't Don't Look Back. Yeah, it was Don't Look Back. There's the Inside, there's the Guys. And the songs on here, Don't Look Back, It's Easy was okay. A Man I'll Never Be is a kind of a long, stretched out song that's very unlike anything for Boston. But side 2, they do have a couple of hits on here that are also played on the radio. Feeling Satisfied and Party. Which, of course, this was not going to reach the limits of the first album. That would have been almost impossible. But it's a good follow-up. But when I want to hear Boston, I will pull out their first one. And next, I'm going to go into an artist that is out of England. We lost him a couple of years ago to cancer. And I'm talking about David Bowie, the man who saw the world. This is an alternate album cover that we're used to. I don't know why. I tried to read up on it, and I don't know if I have an import or why. But the songs on here are really good. And especially when he was with Mick Ronson. Mick Ronson really had that guitar, that rock sound. The thing with David Bowie was that he always had different types of music. He would go from rock to pop to to electronic, and maybe that's why he has such a big following, because he touched on so many genres. I prefer the rock side of him, and the songs on here: "The Width of a Circle," "Black Country Rock," and "The Man Who Sold the World," which Nirvana did a wonderful cover of it, and I like both versions. I don't like one version better than the other. And next that I have by David Bowie is Ziggy Stardust. I like this album a lot. This is fantastic. Again, with Mick Ronson, and the way that David Bowie transcends himself into this different character. And the songs on here: 5 Years, Soul Love, Moonage Daydream, Starman, and It Ain't Easy. That's side one. It's a fantastic side. And then Star, Lady Stardust, and Suffocating City, and the title track, Ziggy Stardust. This is really good. I enjoy this every time I put it on. I heard it probably a couple months ago. And next we have by David Bowie, Young Americans. This was a fantastic album for him as well. I know I keep on saying the word fantastic, but it just is. And he's got a couple of guests. He's got a guest star on here by the name of John Lennon. And John Lennon is on Fame, which is pretty ironic that they will sing that song together. And he also does a cover of Across the Universe, which is a Beatles song that John Lennon sang and wrote, and coincidentally enough, he does it on this album. And also the title track is great, Young Americans. And next for David Bowie, Changes 1, which is a greatest hits album, or a compilation, or a review of his 70s hits. And Space Oddity, which I think was in '69. John, I'm Only Dancing, Changes, Ziggy Stardust, Suffocating City, Genie, Diamond Dogs, Rebel Rebel, Young Americans, Fame, and Golden Years. And yes, I read them all because they're all great. And they came out with another version of this on CD with other added bonus tracks, if you will. But I've always liked this one. And that would be all that I have right now for David Bowie. Like I said, I only like a small period of his. I respect him immensely, just that I prefer his rock side. And next we have a band here. This is one of my favorite albums that I like very much. And they only did this one album. They were just a one album kind of band. What they did was that it was a side project. That's the word I was looking for. It was a side project for Blink 182, and we're talking about Boxcar Racer. This is a great album from beginning to end. This has Travis Barker and Tom DeLonge are on here, and a couple of guest stars. But this is a really good album, and the songs on here: I Feel So, All Systems Go, Watch the World, Tiny Voices, Cat Like Thief. Cat Like Thief is a great song. And Letters to God, My First Punk Song, and there is an elevator. Then it ends with an instrumental. But this is a fine record. It might be hard to find even on CD or on album. Forget about that. But you might be able to find it streaming, and you can't stream it on Apple. I know that for a fact. And what's coming up next is a band that hails out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. Talking about Brownsville Station. This is a good rock boogie album. It came out in the mid-'70s. They had a couple of hits. Their biggest hit was Smoking in the Boys' Room. But this does not have this on there. A couple of songs on here are good. Automatic Heartbreak and Self-Abuse and Load of Love and They Call Me Rock and Roll. And that's a suite that goes and continues on. One note on this band, the guy Cub Koda was one of the musicians on here was Cub Koda. Cub Koda, after after Brownsville Station, became a really good rock journalist. What's coming up next, we go from Ann Arbor, Michigan to California. And I'm talking about Jackson Browne, the Pretender. I need to get earlier Jackson Browne, but I do enjoy his music. I like his voice and the way that he writes. And the songs on here that are good are Linda Paloma, Here Come Those Tears Again. That's such a heartbreaker. Here Come Those Tears Again, and The Pretender. It ends with The Pretender, and I like that song, and I like Jackson Browne. The next I have by him, excuse me, is Running on Empty. This is a weird album, and sometimes you think it's live, sometimes you're saying, how are they recording this? And I read a little bit about it. They did do it on the road. A couple of tracks were done live, a couple of them were done in a hotel room, a couple of them were done on the bus. So it's a feel. You can feel the difference in this album compared to other records. Great songs on here. Running on Empty. Running on Empty is one of my favorite songs, period. Top 30 songs on my list. And Rosie is really good. Cocaine is great. And The Load Off and Stay, which is a combo which ends the album. And Jackson Browne went into the 80s with a lot of different lyrics. Before, in the 70s, there were a lot of self-singing and singing about his thoughts and about life in general. But when he started to get into the 80s, it was more about socialism and more about the world around him, specifically America. And songs on here, Hold Out, Disco Apocalypse, That Girl Could Sing, and Boulevard. And Of Missing Persons was another good song by him. Then we go to Jackson Browne, Lawyers in Love. This one was a kind of a mess for me. There was nothing here that really said, oh wow, that's a great song. I gotta tell everybody about it. So I skipped it. So I'm not going to talk much about that one. But this one I am. Lives in the Balance. This was not a departure, but a big album going forward, which was totally different from anything that Jackson Browne did. Album tracks here for America, Soldier of Plenty, Candy, and Till I Go Down, and Black and White is also a good song. This album, which you can tell by the album cover, he's pretty pissed off about the way things are going at that time. Next, we have a group that formed in Los Angeles in the late 60s with one of my favorite favorite rock musicians of all time. This band has Neil Young in it, Buffalo Springfield. This was their last album before they will split up. And on the songs here, On the Way Home, which is a song written by Neil Young, but it is sung by Richie Foray. The first time I heard it was on a live album with Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young, 4-Way Street, and Neil Young sings it acoustically, and I love that version. And then I heard on this version, I was like, wait a minute, that's not how I like it. So that was a miss for me, especially when I was expecting to hear what I wanted to hear, and it didn't happen. Questions and I Am a Child, which was another Neil Young song, and Kind Woman was also a good song. But this album here, they were on their way out, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, because Neil Young went solo. Stephen Stills went on to Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and the other guys went on and I believe helped form Paco, which was also a big soft rock band in the 70s. This is their greatest hits, Buffalo Springfield retrospective, and this has everything you would want from them. For What It's Worth, which is a famous song with the licks. Mr. Soul, Sit Down, I Think I Love You, Bluebird, On the Way Home, Nowadays, Clancy can't even sing. And again, that's different to the way Neil Young will do it. When Neil Young went solo, he would do it very acoustically. This had such a fun sound to it, and just takes away the meaning of it. Broken Arrow, another Neil Young song. Rock and Roll Woman and I Am a Child, another Neil Young song. And Expecting to Fly, which is another Neil Young song. And if you really look at all these Neil Young songs, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 out of 12 on the greatest hits, which shows how much he contributed to the band. But Buffalo Springfield's a really good starter, good folk rock. And I'll go touch up on folk rock in just a moment. I bought this album about 3 months ago, and I felt cheated. I felt lied to. I tried to take it back to the record store I bought it for 50 cents. I drove all the way back, and they refused. George Byrds. I thought this was going to be stand-up. I thought he was going to tell jokes. He sings country. I was very upset. But I kept it because I told my uncle that it might not be good, but at least I have a picture of George Byrds in my record collection. This was not good at all. May God bless his soul. But I was really expecting some stand-up comedy, but I didn't get it. Maybe I should have looked it up before I bought it, but the element of surprise. Sometimes you get disappointed. And I was talking about folk rock just a little bit earlier with Buffalo Springfield. And we come to one of the greatest folk rock bands, period. Talking about the Byrds. I enjoy the Byrds very much. This is their debut album, Mr. Tambourine Man. They do a lot of Bob Dylan covers, but they do it so well that you never know. Let's see, your Mr. Tambourine Man. I Feel a Whole Lot Better. I'm Here Without You. The Bells of Rimini. All I Want to Do. Chimes of Freedom. Really good songs. It kind of sounds like I was singing it kind of sounds like I was reading off a Bob Dylan album. Their second one was the Byrds. Turn, Turn, Turn. Turn, Turn, Turn was a big hit for them. Not their first big hit, but because their big hit, their first one was Mr. Tambourine Man. But this one came out, and Turn, Turn, Turn. Oh, there's a song on here that ends side 1 called He Was a Friend of Mine. And it talks about the assassination of JFK. And it's a really good song. You know, it goes something like this. I might not get all the words wrong. He goes, the words go something like, he didn't know me, but he was a friend of mine. And that he died in Dallas town. And it's a really good written song. And I think I heard it on XM one time on the 60s. I was like, wow, that's a really good song. And in fact, they did play on the 60s when they were having, I believe it was like the 50th anniversary of the assassination. Other songs on here, The Times Are Changing, and If You're Gone, and The World Turns All Around Her. The Byrds. If you've never taken the time to sit down and hear the Byrds, I highly recommend it. Each album is different, but be ready to hear a lot of Bob Dylan songs. Bob Dylan, I'm sorry, look at that. The Byrds, Fifth Dimension. This is a really good album. Mr. Spaceman, I Come and Stand at Every Door. This also has 8 Miles High. I love 8 Miles High. The way that it just, the way that they harmonize on that song. Oh, well, not just on this song, just the way the Byrds harmonize. And I can't believe I forgot to mention about the way they harmonize. Over here is my favorite album by the Byrds. It is called The Byrds, Younger Than Yesterday. And they got that line off of My Back Pages by Bob Dylan. And these songs on here, So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star, Renaissance Fair, Everybody's Being Burned, of course, Back Pages is on here. The Girl with No Name. The Girl with No Name is a really good song. But the Byrds. And over here, like I said, compilations are great. when you want to hear the greatest hits. And this is full of a Mr. Tambourine Man. I Feel a Whole Lot Better. The Bells of Rimini. Turn, Turn, Turn. All I Want to Really Do. Chimes of Freedom. 8 Miles High. Mr. Spaceman. So You Want to Be a Rock and Roll Star. And My Back Pages. And these don't... A lot of these just have the paper ones. The paper sleeve. And here you have the Byrds, the Ballad of Easy Rider. There was a famous movie, I believe a lot of people know that, in 1969, called Easy Rider with Peter Fonda and Dennis Hopper and Jack Nicholson. And in fact, the liner note in the back here is written by Peter Fonda. This album is a really good one. It's got the Ballad of Easy Rider, Oil in My Lap. Also, Jesus is Just Alright. I'm pretty sure y'all have heard Jesus is Just Alright by the Doobie Brothers, but this is the original version by the Byrds. And Repertoire and Gunja Din. This is a really good album. I enjoy it. I enjoy hearing it every once in a while. But just to mark that there were only two of the original members left from the Byrds. There was a lot of changes towards the end of their career, but they got back together in the early 70s to release an album. This is with the original group. And when original groups get back together after being gone for so long, there's a big hoopla about it, but it never really comes up to anything. It's more of a nostalgia thing of the past and nothing towards the future. There's the inside of it. You can tell that this is from the 70s, not from the 60s, because of this alone. The songs on here, there's a shift where they were doing Bob Dylan cover songs. Here they're doing a couple of Neil Young covers, Cowgirl in the Sand and See the Sky About to Rain. But also they do Born to Rock and Roll and Sweet Mary and Full Circle, the Byrds. And that's all that I have for part 2 of the letter B. And tomorrow or the next day, I will be finishing up episode 3 for the letter B by doing my Beatle records. Thank you for watching. Take care, and y'all be safe out there. See y'all next time.